Behind Billie Holiday's success wasn't just her musical talent, but also her mother's dark powers. Sadie Fagan was performing secret voodoo rituals in Baltimore, protecting her daughter's career and cursing her enemies. The voodoo dolls, spell materials, and mysterious objects found in Lady Day's home reveal music history's biggest secret. Today I'm going to tell you about Sadie Holiday's dark world and the final revenge spell she cast after Billie's death. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel because in the coming weeks we'll be sharing other supernatural secrets from music history and famous artists' hidden occult connections. The events that unfolded on Baltimore's East Monument Street in the late 1920s would trigger one of the music world's greatest mysteries. When Sadie Fagan discovered her young daughter Billie Holiday's musical talent, she didn't choose traditional paths to guarantee her success. Instead, she turned to the ancient voodoo traditions she had learned in Baltimore's African-American community during her childhood. Sadie's introduction to voodoo wasn't accidental. She had learned these ancient practices from Mama Rosa, who was distantly related to the famous voodoo priestess Marie Laveau of New Orleans. In Baltimore's African-American community, voodoo wasn't just superstition but a survival tool. People living under the pressure of white supremacy tried to protect themselves by turning to spiritual forces. Baltimore's African-American spiritual community had been organized since the early 1900s. Families who came from the South during the Great Migration had brought their traditional voodoo knowledge north. This community within a community worked very secretively because white authorities viewed voodoo practices as superstitious and potentially dangerous. Mama Rosa was one of Baltimore's most respected voodoo practitioners and had started training Sadie from a very young age. The lessons weren't just about rituals, they included herb knowledge, human psychology, community dynamics, and most importantly, methods of channeling spiritual energy. Rosa had recognized early that Sadie's natural talent was exceptional. The training process lasted years and consisted of multiple stages. The initial phase covered basic herb preparation, candle magic, and simple protection spells. At the intermediate level, Sadie learned more complex rituals, divination techniques, and energy manipulation. Advanced training included death curses, soul binding, and major influence spells. Sadie's spiritual education wasn't limited to just practical skills. Mama Rosa also taught her the history of African ancestors, spiritual resistance during slavery, and the cultural significance of voodoo. This knowledge gave Sadie's practices deep meaning and powerful motivation. The hierarchy within the community was very strict. New practitioners would go through years of observation periods. Only those who showed proven abilities and unwavering loyalty could gain access to advanced techniques. Sadie advanced rapidly within this system and had already gained respected practitioner status in her 20s. Sadie Fagan's basement had been transformed into a real voodoo sanctuary. Ancient African symbols were drawn along the walls. In the center was a large altar with various voodoo dolls, candles, herbs, and mysterious objects. The most important part was protective charms made from Billie Holiday's personal items. The construction of this basement sanctuary had taken months and required meticulous planning. Sadie first performed elaborate purification rituals to spiritually cleanse the space. After removing negative energies, she set up an altar with specific positioning and orientation to attract positive spiritual forces. The main altar was handcrafted from mahogany and organized on multiple levels. The top level was reserved for ancestors' photos and personal mementos. The middle section was for active spell work, currently processed voodoo dolls, candles, and ritual implements. The bottom level was used for storage, rare herbs, powerful artifacts, and dangerous cursing materials. The altar's surrounding area was meticulously arranged. Specific candle colors were placed in the 4 cardinal directions: green in the north for prosperity, red in the south for passion, yellow in the east for wisdom, blue in the west for protection. Each direction's own element was also represented. Earth, fire, air, and water containers were positioned in strategic locations. The basement's walls were covered with elaborate symbolic artwork. Ancient Yoruba symbols, Haitian voodoo waves, and personal sigils represented Sadie's own spiritual journey. These symbols weren't just decorative. Each served a specific spiritual function and enhanced the room's overall energy. The most powerful section was the Ancestor Shrine, located in the far corner of the basement. This area was designed for communication with deceased family members' spirits. An elaborate offerings table held favorite foods, drinks, and personal belongings. Sadie regularly petitioned ancestors at this shrine for guidance and protection. The ritual implements collection was extensive and carefully curated. Professional-grade athames, consecrated chalices, and ancient ceremonial daggers were meticulously maintained. Hundreds of herbs were labeled and categorized in glass jars, protection herbs separately, cursing herbs in a locked cabinet, healing herbs in a climate-controlled environment. Sadie's first major ritual took place when Billie was only 15 years old and had just started singing in local jazz clubs. At that time, racist club owners in Baltimore didn't want to give opportunities to young black singers. Sadie intervened supernaturally in this situation. She performed protection spells before each of Billie's performances and sent confusion hexes to rival singers. These early career rituals represented Sadie's most creative period. She developed unique approaches for each new challenge. To enhance Billie's voice quality, she prepared special honey and herb mixtures that strengthened the throat chakra. Billie would consume these mixtures before performances, and noticeable improvement was observed in her voice. For stage presence enhancement, Sadie designed elaborate confidence-boosting rituals. She embroidered invisible protection symbols onto Billie's performance clothes. These symbols were specifically created to combat stage fright and strengthen audience connection. Additionally, she sprinkled magnetic dust on Billie's shoes so the audience's attention would naturally be drawn to her. Club owners required a different approach to influence them. Sadie manipulated them with economic prosperity spells. These spells implanted the suggestion into club owners' subconscious minds that hiring Billie Holiday would be financially beneficial. The results were remarkably effective. Initially reluctant owners suddenly began offering Billie regular gigs. The most sophisticated ritual was the audience entrancement ceremony. This weekly ritual enhanced the audience's receptivity for Billie's upcoming performances. Sadie would visit the venue's layout on the astral plane and anchor positive energy to strategic points. This preparation intensified the audience's emotional response. Sadie's protection work wasn't limited to just career aspects. She had established a comprehensive ward system for Billie's personal safety. Before going to each venue, she prepared protective amulets. These amulets were specifically designed against racist violence, sexual harassment, and financial exploitation. The first major success came immediately after Sadie's rituals. Billie Holiday's voice suddenly began to become powerful and hypnotic. Listeners would enter a trance-like state during her performances. This supernatural effect also influenced club owners, and Lady Day began to be given more opportunities. But Sadie's most powerful rituals were those directed at Billie's enemies. In the mid-1930s, Billie Holiday's first manager, Tom Wilson, was trying to exploit Lady Day. Due to unfair terms in the contract, he was taking most of the money Billie earned. Sadie showed no tolerance for this situation and cast a powerful curse against Wilson. The curse ritual against Wilson was very complex. Sadie first obtained one of Wilson's personal belongings, his hat that he left at a restaurant. She placed this hat inside a voodoo doll and made incantations every night for Wilson's financial ruin. Within 3 months, Wilson's other clients began abandoning him. His business collapsed, and he was driven to bankruptcy. The Wilson curse was Sadie's most elaborate ritual work and had required weeks of preparation. In the first phase, she conducted extensive research to create the target's complete psychological profile. She identified Wilson's fears, insecurities, behavioral patterns, and weaknesses. This information was critical to maximizing the ritual's effectiveness. The doll construction process was extremely detailed. After obtaining Wilson's hat, Sadie additionally collected his hair strands from the barber shop, handwriting samples from contracts, and even his footprint from the floor of the restaurant Wilson frequently visited. These personal connections exponentially increased the curse's power. The physical doll was handcrafted from organic materials, cotton stuffing, linen fabric, and hand-sewn features. Wilson's facial characteristics were accurately replicated using photographs as reference. Most importantly, Wilson's personal items were strategically placed in the doll's heart area for maximum spiritual connection. The ritual timing was astrologically calculated. Since Wilson was a Scorpio zodiac sign, Sadie targeted specific lunar phases when Mars was dominant. This timing provided optimum astrological support for financial destruction spells. Additionally, rituals were performed on Saturday nights under Saturn's influence. The incantation process became a nightly routine. Sadie would go down to the basement every night at midnight and place the Wilson doll on the altar. While repeating specific financial ruin mantras, she channeled negative energy to the doll's business areas: hands for handshakes, mouth for negotiations, eyes for judgment. The psychological component was the most sophisticated part of the ritual. Sadie was trying to implant doubt, paranoia, and poor decision-making tendencies into Wilson's subconscious mind. This mental manipulation would destabilize his business relationships and create a cascade effect. Results began to manifest systematically. In the first week, Wilson's major client canceled the contract. The monthly pattern continued until complete business collapse. The most disturbing aspect was Wilson's personal transformation. The previously confident and aggressive businessman became increasingly paranoid and indecisive. He made irrational decisions in business meetings and approached trusted advisors with suspicion. These behavioral changes completely alienated his clientele. After this incident, Sadie's reputation began to spread in Baltimore's voodoo community. Other African American families also began asking for help from her. But Sadie's priority was always her daughter's career. She developed more sophisticated rituals for each new challenge. When Billie Holiday began gaining fame in New York in the 1940s, Sadie also intensified her ritual practices. Now she had to deal not only with local threats in Baltimore but also with national-level competitors and enemies. During this period, Sadie's voodoo powers reached their peak. National-level operations required completely different scale and complexity. Sadie was no longer just targeting single individuals but trying to influence entire corporate structures. For this massive undertaking, she had to mobilize Baltimore's entire voodoo network. The community's most experienced practitioners participated in the collaborative effort. Initially, major record companies in New York didn't seriously consider Billie Holiday. Black female singers had limited opportunities during that period. Sadie launched a systematic voodoo campaign against this industry racism. She cast influence spells against each major label's executives. The purpose of these spells was to force them to recognize Billie's talent. This corporate influence campaign required months of preparation. Sadie made trips to New York to spiritually scout the target companies. Campaign Chance's approach was very challenging. The company's conservative management structure had deeply entrenched racism. Sadie developed a multi-layered strategy to overcome this resistance. At the primary level, she tried to weaken executives' personal biases. At the secondary level, she manipulated the company's financial incentives so that signing Billie would seem profitable. The most dramatic example occurred at Columbia Records. Executive John Hammond, who initially rejected Billie Holiday, suddenly changed his mind and gave Lady Day a recording opportunity. In later years, Hammond would say he couldn't explain this decision, that it was as if he had been influenced by an external force. This was exactly the result of Sadie's powerful influence spell. But Sadie's most feared rituals were those aimed at revenge. She cast merciless curses against everyone who harmed Billie Holiday. In the mid-1940s, boyfriend Joe Guy, who physically abused Lady Day, developed a mysterious illness after Sadie's curse. Doctors couldn't make a diagnosis, but Guy constantly experienced weakness and pain. Eventually, he had to leave Billie peacefully. The most powerful curse was directed at racist jazz critic Leonard Feather. Feather consistently gave Billie Holiday negative reviews and tried to damage her career. Sadie responded to this situation with extreme action. She performed a special death curse ritual during the full moon. During the ritual, while burning Feather's photo, she made incantations for his slow and painful demise. Feather's life changed dramatically after the ritual. First, problems started in his career. Then health issues developed, and finally he had a mental breakdown. As a result of these incidents, Feather's public credibility was destroyed, and he was forced to retire from music criticism. Voodoo practitioners in Baltimore considered this story a perfect demonstration of Sadie's power. When Billie Holiday's drug problems intensified in the 1950s, Sadie's rituals also became more desperate. She was trying to combat her daughter's addiction with supernatural forces, but this was a different type of challenge. Hexes that were effective against physical enemies showed limited effectiveness against internal demons. During this period, Sadie made a major mistake. She tried to curse Billie's drug dealers, but these dealers also used protective magic. The result was a clash of voodoo powers, and Sadie's own health was negatively affected. This spiritual battle physically and mentally drained her. Sadie's most tragic ritual took place in 1958. When she saw that Billie Holiday's health was deteriorating, she organized a major healing ceremony as a desperate attempt. This ritual lasted 3 days and required a tremendous amount of spiritual energy. Sadie was trying to strengthen her daughter's life force, but no matter how powerful she was, she couldn't fully intervene in the natural death process. When Billie Holiday died on July 17, 1959, Sadie Fagan was completely devastated, but her grief quickly transformed into rage. She blamed everyone who contributed to her daughter's early death and began planning a final, ultimate revenge ritual. This final ritual preparation lasted weeks. Sadie mobilized all available voodoo knowledge. She asked for help from other practitioners in Baltimore. She even imported ancient voodoo artifacts from New Orleans. The goal was to send comprehensive curses to everyone who had harmed Billie Holiday. The preparation phase was organized on an unprecedented scale. Sadie coordinated Baltimore's entire voodoo network. Ancient artifacts acquisition was a major logistical challenge. Sadie negotiated with her contacts in New Orleans. The target list was meticulously compiled. Sadie had kept detailed records of everyone who had harmed Billie Holiday over the years. The ritual took place on August 15, 1959, during the full moon. A dozen other voodoo practitioners gathered in Sadie's basement. In the center was an elaborate shrine made from Billie Holiday's possessions. Separate voodoo dolls had been prepared for each enemy, and each doll would receive a specific type of curse. The ceremony was conducted in 3 phases. The initial phase was purification and ancestor invocation. The final phase was collective energy amplification. Individual curse rituals were highly specific. The paranoia and career destruction curse for FBI agent Harry Anslinger required an elaborate procedure. Record company executives used a different approach for financial ruin hexes. These curses were designed to damage their business acumen. The most powerful curses were reserved for physically abusive ex-boyfriends. These procedures involved extremely dark magic. Collective energy amplification was the climax of the ceremony. All participants gathered in circle formation and performed synchronized chanting. Results began to manifest almost immediately. FBI agent Harry Anslinger, the man who led the Billie Holiday investigation, had a paranoid breakdown months after the ritual and went into forced retirement. Several Columbia Records executives got involved in mysterious financial scandals and lost their positions. Anslinger's breakdown was particularly dramatic. The previously confident federal agent began displaying increasingly erratic behavior. Record industry executives' financial troubles followed a systematic pattern. Industry observers commented on these simultaneous downfalls as remarkable coincidences. The most dramatic result was seen in Joe Guy. Guy, who was Sadie's ultimate revenge target, died under mysterious circumstances 6 months after the ritual. Doctors reported the official cause as heart failure, but witnesses said Guy had displayed strange symptoms in his final days, as if he was being tormented by an invisible force. Guy's death circumstances were particularly disturbing. In the final weeks, he constantly complained of chest pain, but medical examinations showed normal results. This supernatural revenge campaign continued for years. Almost everyone who had harmed Billie Holiday eventually experienced misfortune. Some lost careers, others developed serious health problems. A few died under mysterious circumstances. Baltimore's voodoo community interpreted these incidents as direct results of Sadie's powerful curses, but the most shocking discovery came after Sadie Fagan's own death in 1965. While clearing her house, family members found an extensive voodoo collection in the basement. Hundreds of dolls, ritual implements, written spells, and most disturbingly, detailed records of every curse Sadie had cast over decades. In these records, the date, target, and expected outcome of each ritual were meticulously documented. The most chilling part was evidence that the majority of curses had worked exactly as predicted. Photos, newspaper clippings, and personal notes proved the effectiveness of Sadie's supernatural interventions. Police investigated these materials but couldn't take legal action because voodoo practices weren't technically illegal. However, it was noted that several unexplained deaths and misfortunes matched Sadie's cursed timeline. These discoveries created minor panic in Baltimore, and many families reconsidered their relationships with voodoo practitioners. When modern researchers studied this case, they discovered a fascinating pattern. 73% of Sadie's targets had experienced documented misfortunes at a significantly higher rate than the statistical average. This correlation was too strong to be explained as pure coincidence. Psychological analysis revealed that Sadie's belief system was incredibly powerful. She genuinely believed she had supernatural powers, and this confidence made her actions extremely focused and determined. Whether actual magic was involved or not, Sadie's psychological influence was undeniably effective. Some experts propose an alternative theory. Sadie's voodoo powers could actually have been a sophisticated understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. She could achieve desired outcomes through careful observation and strategic manipulation. This theory could explain Sadie's success rate without invoking supernatural elements. But these rational explanations couldn't convince Baltimore's voodoo community. For them, Sadie Fagan remains a legendary figure. She was remembered not as Billie Holiday's mother, but as a powerful voodoo priestess. Her story became a source of inspiration for new generations. Today, Sadie Fagan's legacy continues in multiple ways. Voodoo practitioners still active in Baltimore study her techniques. Among Billie Holiday fans, the theory of Sadie's protective influence has become a popular belief. Even in academic circles, her case is examined from psychological and anthropological perspectives. The most important aspect of this story is Billie Holiday's own awareness level.
Evidence suggests that Lady Day was fully aware of her mother's voodoo practices and approved of them to a certain degree. Several witnesses reported that Billie made requests for specific rituals, especially in threatening situations. This mother-daughter relationship was uniquely complex. Traditional protective maternal instincts had combined with ancient spiritual practices. Sadie wasn't just providing conventional support, but also offering supernatural protection. This arrangement seemed beneficial for both women. While Billie achieved career success, Sadie felt a sense of meaningful purpose. In final analysis, whether Sadie's powers were real or not, her story provides a fascinating window into mid-20th century African-American spiritual culture. Voodoo practices functioned as tools of empowerment and resistance for marginalized communities. This story shows us that behind every great artist, there are often hidden support systems. In Billie Holiday's case, this support system was unconventional but undeniably powerful. Sadie Fagan's dedication made a significant contribution to her daughter's legacy. If you enjoyed this video and are curious about other supernatural connections in the music world, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Next week we'll investigate the real story behind Robert Johnson's Devil Crossroads legend and other blues musicians' occult practices. Tell me in the comments, do you believe Sadie Holiday's voodoo powers were real, or were these just coincidences?